Chateau Saint-Michel Cabernet Sauvignon from 2017. And this is also around 88% Cabernet and also some Syrah and Merlot. How can you tell that this is what it is? I mean, what will you get in the wine? What that tells you in a blind tasting that this is actually Washington State?
When you're not sure if it's old world or new world, where am I going to put it? I get back to the initial story, the freshness that you get. Because of our climate, we have that hybrid between warm and cold climate. At the end of the season, when the daily temperatures are low, you get physiological ripeness, hence the Cabernet grapes start tasting like Cabernet. They still develop a little bit sugar, but when it's cold, they stop developing sugars. That means they preserve acidity, so you preserve the freshness in your berries and therefore in your wine. So a warm climate wine tends to have a big body. This is a medium plus body. It's rich, but it is not big. It has some elements of oak, but it's not oaky. And it has definitely, and that is probably the quintessential part, fresh fruits. If you take a sip in your mouth, you have fresh fruits. No marmalade or cooked fruit. You have the fresher fruits. I always get some cherries. You always get some lovely velvety tannins. You get a tiny little bit of a kiss of oak. But definitely the freshness that you get from this Cabernet puts it for me in Washington.
Well, that's super cool. And these are grapes that are sourced from different sub-regions within Washington States. Why? And I mean, why? How come?
If you take Washington State, it's 24,000 hectares of viticulture, which is a little bit smaller than the Champagne. It's between Champagne and Alsace, so it's a small region. And the 24,000 hectares are spread out over a surface from 200 times 200 kilometers. So there's a vineyard here, there's a vineyard there, there's a vineyard there, there's a vineyard there, completely spread out. And so we have a lot of different microclimates. That means if we go to the Walook Slope, Cabernet is more New World. We go to Walla Walla, the Cabernet is a little bit spicier. We go to Yakima Valley, Cabernet is racier because it's cooler. So what we want to do with this Columbia Valley Cabernet is we want to represent a typical Washington-style Cabernet. Again, with the signature of Chateau Saint-Michel, but we want to make this typical Washington. We want to represent that freshness. I think when we get to the next wine in a tiny little bit, you're going to see the difference between a typical Washington and a more appellation-oriented wine like the Indian Wells, which comes from just one specific area that has a specific terroir and therefore a specific flavor profile.
It's been aged on oak for 14 months, if I'm correctly informed. But what I want to ask you is, I mean, what would you say is the sort of the perfect occasion? I mean, when do you pick a bottle of this out of the cellar, and how do you serve it?
We did a last at home last year. We all had a lot of time. Unfortunately, being at home. I travel normally a lot. So last year I was all of a sudden not 180 days per year in a hotel room somewhere in Stockholm or you name it. So I've been spending a lot of time on my deck. And what we did is we made the patio outside a little prettier. And when my neighbors came by, this would be a typical wine that I would open. Funny enough, they always come around dinner time. Can you imagine? Funny.
Wonder why.
And the barbecue might have been on and might have done some veggies and things, and a bottle of white wine was there. So they probably figured out there is a nice time. This would be the wine that I would open for daily consumption. I would open it when my friends come around. When I have multiple friends here, and some of them are my wine snob friends that like the posh things, but some others are just average friends. I mean, average friends that are average wine consumers. They don't really want to care about the terroir, the oak, the this, the that. Because my wine snob friends would say this is extremely well made, and I like it. And my non-wine friends would say, oh, this is great, give me another glass.